Hoover Institute Senior Fellow Victor Davis Hanson. You look at that and you think back 2 years ago. I mean, how do you describe it? I don't even have words to describe what Biden did day in and day out on the few days we would see him.
Well, we know now that the people that were around him and the media who covered him knew better than we did how bad off he was, that he wasn't capable of being president. We know his wife knew the same thing because she said he thought he was having a stroke during the debate. And that was the greatest cover-up, I think, in presidential history, maybe since Woodrow Wilson was in a coma. But it was that's the real issue, that they deliberately hid the condition of the President of the United States so that he could continue in power, and they could, as a waxen effigy, albeit, and they could get through this most radical progressive agenda in 100 years, I think.
All right, so there's a lot of talk and analysis about the memorandum versus the words of Donald Trump, that he'll rain down hell on them if, in fact, the very things he has been articulating all throughout this conflict are not fulfilled at the end of this deal. He will be the ultimate decider here. I put way more stock in what the president is saying himself and what the president has outlined himself, and the understanding that they have gone way deeper than that document that was released today, except they're not telling people yet.
Yeah, I think the critical issue is we should expect, given their history of untruth, lying, and breaking agreements, and I think they will try to do that, what are we going to do? And I think Donald Trump has a record that will hit them hard. So the two chief issues I'm not so worried about. I think we know where the enriched uranium is. It's sealed. We have great intelligence. We can bomb it. We can hit more of their industrial complexes if they cheat. And they will open the Strait of Hormuz because they're just about broke. The other things are known unknowns. We don't, it's going to be more difficult to ensure they're not giving money to the Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas. That's more murky, and we don't know what they're going to do in Lebanon. And then, of course, we don't know what's going on in Iran because this is the first real air war. We don't have boots on the ground. We don't have embeds, but we will learn very shortly, and we're going to get an idea of just how much damage was done. I think it might have been $500 billion or more in the nuclear military industrial complex. We don't know the mood of the people. Are they going to come out and say to their own government, you mean we lost everything we had and now you could have done this peacefully? Instead, you acted so tough, you were humiliated, and now we're broke and destitute. And all you had to do was agree in the first place, and then we don't know how the government will react to that. There could be a widespread uprising. We don't know what we're going to do if they try to kill another 40,000 people. So the main denominator, though, that has to be ironclad is we have to react disproportionately anytime they break the agreement. And I'm afraid I don't want them to. I hope they don't. But given their history, I think they'll try Donald Trump at least once. And I think he'll hit them very hard, and then things will settle down. But they have no record of ever telling the truth. The other thing very quickly is there's some people talking about, that Iran is going to enter the family of nations again. I wish that were true, but that's only going to happen if there's a different government. And, the Berlin Wall fell, and it took the Soviets 2 years to fall. So this could be something like that, but we don't know what's going to happen in the next few months as the people come out, assess the damage of their country, and hold their government responsible. And that'll be very interesting to see what they do. And we'll learn about it because they'll be reporting from the ground for the first time in 4 or 5 months.
With the confidence that they will never have a nuclear weapon, and with the confidence, let's say, assume for the sake of argument that the strait gets open, although you do have the southern lane that has been open, and we've been taking out millions of barrels a day from there. Assuming those two things take place, Victor Davis Hanson, that means we have the nuclear equation under control, which has always been the president's main goal. It's never been about regime change, although some seem to want to argue it never was. We also have an election. If you look at where the economy is in the minds of the American people, that's 85%. If you look at Iran, it's 25%. the president can go back to bombing the living hell out of them anytime he wants, to me.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Democrats are very worried. I think people have got the midterms wrong. I know that of the last 41 midterms since the Civil War, 38 of them have cost the incumbents party seats. But there's a lot of things out that are ongoing. The economy will snap back very quickly, and the oil price will go down. I don't remember what was in the headlines 4 months ago. He can hit them without causing economic dislocation if they try to break things. And more importantly, we don't know the effect of the redistricting. It seems like the red states might have the edge there. We don't know the effect of the Supreme Court ruling on racial gerrymandering. All of that has the Democrats so apprehensive that on one day they say that Donald Trump is Hitler. The next day they say he's Neville Chamberlain. The next day he says he's a taco. They can't decide what he is. And maybe that's good. But all that really matters is his determination to hit them disproportionately when and if they break any agreement that they have signed on to. If that happens, they'll fall back in line. I think he will do that.
I think he will, too. And I think that he got their attention when he hit him twice a week ago and then threatened to take Carg Island. That got their attention. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you. All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.